Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is a very special person. Dr. Gabriel Cousens is a world famous holistic physician, rabbi, yogi, wild mystic, psychiatrist, family therapist, Native American, sun dancer, eagle dancer, spirit dancer, homeopath, and naturopath, a true world leading expert in natural healing. You can find out more about Dr. Gabriel Cousens and his wonderful work at two websites. The first one is drcousens.com and treeoflife.mn.co. And while you're visiting drcousens.com and treeoflife.mn.co, definitely look into joining his worldwide meditations. And these are meditations that you can join in from anywhere in the world to raise the vibration of the planet. Welcome, Dr. Cousens.
Catherine, I'm delighted to be on your show and to share with your audience.
Now, Dr. Cousens, I believe that you have a prayer that you want to start everybody off with.
Right. So it's a prayer that has to do with the merging of heart and mind and heavens and earth, bringing us into what we call heart wisdom. Okay, so here it goes. B'Shem Yakud Kudusha Brihu Ushinate Bi'ilu Ilulayha Chimyuke Belovke Biadashlam Shem Kozriel Kolam Amen. Now just feel the merging of heart and mind. Okay.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Now, Dr. Cousens, you just published your latest book, Into the Nothing. How many books have you published so far? And can you tell us about your new book, Into the Nothing?
Here it is. Okay. And there are multiple messages. Yes, I have, this is my 13th book. And it's, to me, I never expected to write any books, never had any ambition, but it's just this artistic expression of get it out there. So that's really how it started. It was with the 1975, Swami Muktananda, a great spiritual liberated master. I received Shaktipat from him. What is that? That's the awakening of the spiritual energy that we have within us. And when it's awakened, it begins to activate your whole chakra system, your subtle body system, your DNA, and a lot more. And I went into the nothing. I disappeared for the first time in my life. I'm 33 years old at that time. And as I came out, a little voice rang out and said, you should learn to eat and live in a way that supports the Kundalini. That simple. But it's important to listen. So one of the key things about the book is listen to what God is telling you, what your soul is telling you, and do it. Okay. And a lot of people, maybe they're too shy, or they don't believe in themselves enough. But when you get messages, it's really important to follow them. Otherwise, why bother? So that was a very important thing. And that's really how I started my writing career. I don't see myself as a writer, but I'm going to say creative expression to get the message out in different ways. So my very first book, 1986, was the Rainbow, it was the Rainbow Life Food Cuisine, okay? And so spiritual nutrition and the rainbow diet, really. Okay, so that was like a whole thing for me in that way. I have been listening to that little voice for a while, and we can call it intuition, but actually I hear it, okay? And when I was 1 year old, a little bit, my first year, I actually had TB, which in 1943, somewhat of a death sentence. There's no medication for it in 1943. But somehow, between my mother's love, actually my parents' love, I'm obviously here, right? I may have a few scars on my lungs, but that's okay. I'm here. And then when I was 4, I got this message that I needed to be a doctor. No one in my family had ever been in the medical field at all, period. Totally. But this message came through. I'm 4 years old. What do I know? Okay. But I knew I had to follow that. When I was 8, then I began having visions of kind of spiritual beings in white robes. And at that time, in the early 50s, that was a strange thing to be talking about. It's not like today. So I learned not to share that. When I was 16, my older brother was killed in a car accident. He and I were very, very close. And then that's when I began meditating, and I was kind of guided to kind of go inward. That's a hard way to do it. But one of the other messages in the book is life gives us all these experiences. How are we going to interpret them? And the key is always to interpret them as a way to uplift yourself spiritually. So that's what I was really learning is, okay, I'm meditating, I'm going within. Thank you, God. This is not the most comfortable message, but anything, the world is the teacher. All our experiences that come to us, the key is not say, poor me, or I'm a victim, but something very different. How can I take this experience and elevate myself spiritually? So the world is the guru. In India, we call Guru Tattva. The world is the guru. But that's a very key message in the book. Follow that little voice. Whatever experience is coming to you, see it from the point of an opportunity to be elevated spiritually. And that is what really happened. I actually spent a lot of time in my brother's room, and I actually created a heart-lung machine. Again, that was way before they were out in the public. That was in the 50s. And I won the state science fair with it. But it was, what was I doing? I was creating life. When the machine turned on, people experienced that it was alive. It was, again, a more mystical experience. And then at the age of 33 is when this mystery of death, which had been pushing me. I mean, you can read in a book, but when I came out of meditation, I realized there is no death for the self. The soul is eternal. It's neither born or it neither dies. And having the inner experience of that, not the literary experience, was a major transformation, and also brought me into being, instead of being born into death as I was, now I'm born into life. But I honor death as a really good teaching experience. So as it unfolded then, and after 7 years, meditating 6 hours a day and chanting 4.5 hours a day, and my 2 kids, 5 and 8 years old, and my wife, we're all involved in this way of life, mostly in India, not fully in India, and also part-time living off the land, no electricity, no water. We create our own energy kind of systems. Okay, and then on returning from India, after I was acknowledged as liberated, okay, by Muktananda, my other guru, Swami Prakashananda, then I did a 40-day fast, 1983. And at the end of that time, another voice rings out and says, I was actually leaving my body. And day 40, I'm going without food and water for a while. It's like, okay, But God said, no, turn around, get back in, and now it's time to go to your roots. And then I began studying the Torah and the biblical kind of understanding, and began to connect with that. That's how I became a rabbi. But more is going on, because while all this is happening, and particularly when I was in India, the gods and goddess would actually appear. They would materialize. And I thought, well, maybe I'm a little crazy here. What's that, you know? But one day in front of Swami Prakashananda, Sai Baba of Shirdi, who left his body in 1918, he was God merged being, appeared in front of both of us as we're walking, put his hand out, and energy came out and initiated me, and it just knocked me over. I'm thinking, am I imagining things? No. Swami Prakashananda said, no, no, Sai Baba Shirdi just showed up. And so there is a kind of a energetic that gets transferred when those things happen. And we also know that Shaktipat and Mukta initiated me to be able to give that energy. But a part of your soul goes into the person. It's a very important thing to understand. And one time meditating, doing fire ceremony, I was just in a little forest in 1985. The goddess Lakshmi appears. Now, Lakshmi is the goddess of spiritual and material wealth, and physically appeared just like Sai Baba, and actually merged with me, and actually put her feminine energy into me. Literal transfer of energy. I mean, it was a full multi-chakra interaction, a multi-physical interaction, but she literally transferred that physical, spiritual, feminine energy. So there is a principle in the mystical Kabbalah where you can, we're literally, energy is transferred, spiritual energy is transferred in, and there's transformation happening. When we talk about what we call the Aikido with Abraham and Yitzhak, just when that sacrifice was almost going to happen, there's an energy transfer, and both of them became liberated. Yitzhak was too severe. He had the loving kindness of Abraham going to him. Abraham was too loving kindness. He had to have the severity of Yitzhak, and they both became whole with that. So it's a very, very important principle that can happen. And so when we're doing this spiritual awakening in the East called Shaktipat, in the West, in the holistic, it's Haniha. But same thing, transfer of the spiritual energy, awakening, Ruach Kadesh in the West, Kundalini in the East. There is a soul transfer happening. So those things really became very material to me in the sense that they really happened. When I first came to Israel in 2007, I meditated for 72 hours without food and water right above Arad in the Negev desert in a half cave. And Abraham appeared and again transferred the energy to me. And again, I used to be hesitant to talk about it, but since it really is a principle of this energy transfer, it's like, okay, I just have to share that because not everybody knows about it. Very few people know about it, but it's there and it's very real. So I've been very fortunate with that voice of God, the small little voice, but also certain beings like Lakshmi, Sai Baba Shirdi, and Abraham appearing. And I'm just in this little half cave with a little fire going. There's nothing. I'm in the middle kind of a slope because so the wild animals aren't going to visit me. And so that's kind of the story on a deep spiritual energetic level of the unfolding. But into the nothing, last step of the story here to make sense is that meditation has many qualities. It can make you relaxed. People who meditate for 5 years, they actually have a physiology, it's 15 years younger. And actually, with age, every year we lose 0.4% of our brain mass. Meditation, according to Harvard, actually increases your brain mass. Pretty interesting. Okay, so that's one level. Another level, it quiets the mind. But there's another level when you go beyond the mind, and this is what I'm talking about, into nothing. The distinct you, first there's the I am this, I am that, and then there's I-ness, subtle awareness, and finally there's no you, there's only God. That's into the nothing, where you cease to exist as a separate isness or entity from God. It's total merging. And that's what into the nothing is. To do that, you have to let go of any illusion of control, any illusion of safety, and know there's only God. And literally, it's not like when people die, they go down or have near-death experience, they go down a tunnel, but they're still there in the subtle body. It's not like that. You actually, there's no you left. There's nowhere to stand, and there's no one to be standing. So the book is about that journey on all those levels. So that's what the book is about. Into the nothing really means nothing, which is kind of way beyond the mind.
Now, Dr. Gabriel Cousens, what is the holistic liberation way?
Okay, so it's a good question. And it is a way of life rather than spiritual practice. So it's eating in a way that helps you become a superconductor of the divine. What does that mean? 100% plant-based, at least 80% live food. Now for me, I'm 99%, but 80% it works. That's what my observation is the last 30 years. It works. Fasting, spiritual fasting twice a year. I didn't say fasting, I said spiritual fasting. So you're fasting with the intent to wake up spiritually. And so we use green juices diluted in half, and usually a 7-day cycle, which is very safe, very safe. Okay, but we do meditating 3 times a day and spiritual discussion. And now we're doing it over the internet, right? Because you can't really gather so much. So I'm doing that a few times a year. Okay, and then the next part is, and your book, some of your books are about that, building the prana. And so we have the breathing, and you have a book on the breathing. And we also include sacred dance. I love to dance. It's really fun. I love it. And Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga asana. My wife is really the tri-yoga teacher, but I teach yoga a lot. And I do it 6 days a week. Now, this is a lifestyle. This is the key that I'm trying to make. So it's a lifestyle. It's a way of life that leads to liberation. If it's your destiny, you can't force it. But it's a fun way of life. Okay, that's key. And now, next is service and charity. You yourself love to do service. I have programs in really 13 different countries, over 100 programs in diabetes prevention and organic farming. And in Africa, we have working with 5 different countries in Africa, providing clean water, which means digging wells, basic stuff, okay? Service and charity. I'm working with Native American groups, groups in the US, lots of programs in Mexico, and Honduras, and Nicaragua, different places. The fourth is, if you're ready, working with a spiritual teacher. So I had Swami Muktananda, and I also Swami Prakashananda, who's the first person he proclaimed as liberated. So there's a whole lineage that I'm connected to that way, as well as the Torah Abrahamic lineage. And that's important if you're ready. The fifth is as much meditation as possible. And I love to meditate. I love to go beyond the mind. And personally, I try to meditate. It's like my food, actually. I meditate about an hour twice a day, as well as doing the tri yoga and the breathing pranayama in the morning and eating that way and service and charity. They're all go together. Now, when you're doing service and charity, your heart is connecting with the world. You begin to feel your oneness with the world. Now, as you go deeper, there's something else that happens. As you connect to the self, okay, not the ego self, but the self, you begin to connect to what I call the non-causal joy, non-causal peace, non-causal oneness, non-causal harmony. This comes from us. It can be set off by outer relationships, sacred relationships in that way. It could be set off by different things, but it is us. It's the truth of who we are. And that gets more and more who you are. So this non-causal joy, non-causal love, non-causal peace, it emanates from the self. Okay, and that is something that happens more and more and more until you're more primarily in that awareness. And that goes all the way. And you mentioned something earlier about the koshas, layers of the mind. It permeates all the layers of the mind. And why vegan? Why plant-based? Because when animals are killed, they have pain, fear, and misery. And that goes into you, and it really goes into all the layers of your mind at the same time. So at the top layer, Anandamaya Kosha, we have the non-causal love, non-causal peace, non-causal joy. It's, again, the essence. And that just begins to be kind of the essence of your life. And so it's a way of life that way that really takes you into that oneness. And when it's more than 50% of the time, we call that liberation, self-liberation, and then that's a whole spectrum in itself. But what I'm really talking about is focus on the way of life, don't focus on a goal. So that's the difference between meaning and purpose. Meaning is, okay, this is my way of life. It connects me to the divine. I feel this joy. And if you get focused on purpose, you get focused on goal, and that builds ego, which gets in the way. So there's some subtleties there in the big picture. Now with the whole internet thing, once a month I am offering a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday meditation retreats over the internet, a way of sharing, and it turns out that you can give Shaktipat through the eyes over the internet. That was a surprise, but it works. Okay, so all those things are kind of a part of the way of life. And the final is receiving as much Shaktipat or Haniha as possible, because it stimulates the awakening, and not just awakening, but the unfolding of the Kundalini energy, or in the biblical tradition, we call it the Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit. So all that's going on, and that's the way of life. It's a way of living. It's fun. It's not a spiritual practice as if you're separate from it. It's like, this is what I do. This is how I live.
Now,
Good question.
Dr. Gabriel Cousens, much of your life has been focused on the attainment, really, of enlightenment. What exactly is enlightenment?
I don't know if I can answer that question, but what I will tell you is this is really true. I've been at a certain level, like in the seventh year when I was in India. And I would check in with Swami Prakashananda, who's acknowledged as liberated by Muktananda. And as I'm sharing the kind of things I'm sharing, the non-causal bliss, non-causal love, non-causal peace, just feeling the light energy. It's not psychic, it's a total experience. Feeling the oneness with everything. He actually said, guess what? You're liberated. And guess what? I didn't believe him. Now, what am I saying? I didn't believe him because I actually had kind of passed through it. It wasn't like I had one cosmic experience and I'm enlightened. It wasn't like that. It was just this continual building of all levels of my beingness, all levels of my soul, all levels of the koshas, until finally I was more there than I wasn't there. It took him 3 times over a period of a few months for me to actually believe him. Because it was like, what? But because I had created a concept as if it were separate from me. So it's the freedom to move in any direction. It's the predominant experience of non-causal love, non-causal peace, non-causal oneness, non-causal joy, just happening all the time. And the oneness. Now it's not as simple as that, because when I returned from India, I was feeling everybody's stuff. Okay. And I actually, it took me about 10 years to be able to learn how to experience, but also boundary at the same time. So you can experience what's going on for somebody, both for healing purposes, but whatever's going on, and then be able to help them. Okay. But there's a balance in what we call the tree of life between boundaries, or what we call Gavura, and Hesed, loving kindness. And at the center, it's called Tiferet, beauty. And so it took me another 7, 8 years to get to that place of balance with it, to be at another level. And that's why I talk about liberation is multidimensional. We're multidimensional beings walking between the worlds. And it's, can we hold all those worlds simultaneously? The world where you don't exist, into nothing, and also the physical world, and the emotional world, and the mental world, and the spiritual world. So it was learning to integrate all those. And that is the natural way of living that takes with liberation, but also helps you integrate over time as a multidimensional being walking between them.
Dr. Gabriel Cousens, lots of people talk about Kundalini. For example, when we practice yoga, we talk about cultivating Kundalini. What is your experience of Kundalini? What is Kundalini?
Okay, so there's the cosmic Kundalini that's happening and inputting into us. And then it's said to condense down and hold itself in the what we call the 3 rivers below the base chakra. And it's stored there. And when enough spiritual energy is ready, it can be awakened. Now, the safest way to awaken it is with Shaktipat, which is I've been talking about. And I've been empowered to give that to Swami Muktananda, who also acknowledged me as liberated. And when that energy that comes from the person giving Shaktipat, and you're ready, it can awaken this high, intense level spiritual energy and awaken it. And then it begins to take you to what I call the final step before liberation. That's activating all the chakras, balancing the chakras, activating the subtle bodies, taking beyond the mind. So it's a cosmic force. Okay, I call it the hand of God. It takes you to the heart of God. Okay, so I think it is a powerful cosmic force. We use the word kind of Kundalini, Shakti Kundalini is the feminine force of God. But and that's what it really is in that way, because the feminine is connected to the material. So it's a spiritual energy in all of the world, but also stored at the base. And so that's rising. And then you have the cosmic Kundalini coming down. They actually, there's like could be two columns. And when it's awakened, then those columns begin resonating with each other. So it is the cosmic force of the universe uh, and the cosmic force of the universe stored in a contractive state at the again the three rivers at the base of the spine, Ida, Pingala, Shishima, and when it's awakened, it takes you to liberation. Many of the yogic tradition will say you really can't be liberated and can't really wake up without the Kundalini being really awakened. That's how strongly people feel about it.
Now, Dr. Gabriel Cousens, you are a master of both traditional medicine because you're a holistic physician, and then also many, many forms of natural healing, such as homeopathy, naturopathy, yoga. Underneath all of these different modalities, what do you think are the underlying principles behind healing?
I wrote a book called There is a Cure for Diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And in 3 weeks, we're healing 61% of diabetics, which means offering medications and a blood sugar less than 100. So here's the key. At the end of the 3 weeks, everyone actually says, thank you for reconnecting me to my soul.
Mm.
Okay. And when you're reconnected to your soul, you love yourself enough to want to heal yourself. Because you can tell people exercise, do this, do that. But if you don't love yourself enough to want to heal yourself, it doesn't happen. So the key to the healing is getting people to a place where they can love themselves enough to want to heal themselves. And then everything else is real simple. Okay.
I love
Yes,
that
it's
answer.
multidimensional. Okay. And it's connecting to your soul, which when you feel that soul connection, then you love yourself enough to want to heal yourself. Okay, that's the essence of it. Now we have the physical part we mentioned. There are some thought forms also, physical, emotional healing, and mental healing, and really spiritual. Keep connecting, reconnecting to your soul. And that's the driving force that makes it all work. Okay. Now, there are different concepts to get in the way. People often have negative thought forms. One of them is, well, the message out there is there's no way you can heal from diabetes. It's a fatal diagnosis, whether it's type 1 or type 2, and it's only going to be downhill. Okay. And people have to let go of that concept because it creates a contraction in a belief system. It's not true. So in a concentrated 3-week time, we can make that breakthrough for people. That's the important thing to understand. And it's really about life. Okay, so with age, you're supposed to get weaker and more contracted and more stiff. And okay, so at the age of 77, that's now, when I was captain of an undefeated Amherst College football team, which is not too far from where you were in Massachusetts, okay? I could do 70 push-ups and about 7 pull-ups, okay? Now, age of 77, yesterday, I did 1,000 push-ups, which I'm doing 3 times a week. Okay, now what's my point? And then when I was playing football, I was so stiff I could barely get my hands past my knees. Now I can put my hands on the floor. I couldn't sit cross-legged, and as you can see in the cover of the book, here I am sitting in full lotus. How did that happen? So one of the other messages is with age, we have the potential to get stronger, more flexible, and have more endurance. That's an incredibly important healing message for people. And I'm saying at any age. That's what I'm really saying. I had one lady from New York. She was 93 years old. She came in, she was on 13 different medications. By the time we finished the diabetes program, and she couldn't walk, she came in a wheelchair. Time we finished the 3-week program, she's out of the wheelchair, she's walking, she's off all her medications. I saw her a year later in New York, and she's great. What happened? Loving yourself enough to heal yourself, but also understanding that we can properly focus, get stronger, more flexible, and have more endurance with age. That's a huge message. That's a transformative message for people. So those are some of the key things in the book, but really the message, keys to healing. Connect yourself, love yourself enough to want to heal yourself, and you can get better with age in every parameter.
That leads me to my next question. I'm 61, you're 77. What steps do you think a person needs to take in order to age well?
Well, I don't think about it that way. I don't think about aging. I just think about getting stronger, more flexible, and staying with that joy of the self. So there's a subtlety there, because when we think aging, we are talking about aging. It's a concept. It's a belief system. I'm getting older. I'm getting weaker. I'm getting more contracted. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? So I just compete against myself and say, well, look, I'm about ready to go past 1,000 push-ups 3 times a week. Maybe I'll go 1,100, 1,000. So what I'm saying is, fine, I'm going to just keep getting stronger, better, clearer with as much time as I have to be able to do that. So I don't think about anti-aging per se, because I'm not thinking about aging. I'm just thinking about getting better. So I'm not holding the belief that with age, I'm going to contract. I'm not, with age, if people aren't doing breathing exercises, they lose 50, by the time they're 70, they lose 50% of their lung capacity. Well, I'm not going to think that way. I'm just doing pranayama every day and increasing my lung capacity no matter what. Okay, so I try not to think about aging. Okay, a lot of people want to say anti-aging programs and this. I don't want, it's not the way I think. It's like, get better.
Get
I
better.
don't care. Yeah.
Now, Dr. Gabriel Cousens, many of our listeners work in the fields of natural healing. What do you think it takes to be or become a great healer, to be of service and help people restore their health?
I think one of the things is restoring your own health, being connected to your soul, feeling that inner love, loving yourself enough to want to heal yourself, and then opening your heart. Remember, we said service and charity, where you start to connect with other people. Now, when a lot of people in the world do not feel very connected, okay? And one of the things that a healer does is often help people start to feel connected again, not just to their own soul, but to somebody else. Okay, so there's a sense of connection. And then from that comes the power of inspiration. And it's helping people be inspired to want to heal themselves. Healing yourself is easy. This is not the hard part, okay? It's the loving yourself enough to want to heal yourself. So to me, that's the key thing, is the link, heart-to-heart link, which then transfers to the point where people start to love themselves enough to want to heal themselves. Then the motivation is there. And then all the rest is really pretty simple. You watch your diet, you exercise, you do all the things that are appropriate, but you have the inner motivation because you love yourself enough to want to heal yourself.
Now, Dr. Gabriel,
So that the healer has to be able to do it for themselves, inspire the who they're working with to do the same thing.
to be the example, to be that embodiment. Yes.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Gabriel Cousens, your recent book, Into the Nothing, talks about your spiritual liberation. How do you think spiritual healing facilitates physical healing?
Well, in my healing approach, it can go both ways. Usually we think spiritual healing then opens up, the mental healing and the emotional healing and physical healing. I have seen when people have a physical healing, it opens up emotional, mental, and spiritual healing. So I see it going in both directions, not just from top down. So that's a key concept. Like wherever the opening is, go for that, and then all the layers. But all the layers ultimately in holistic healing need to be healed. And when I was at Columbia Medical School, I was a third-year medical student, and this one lady had been in 3 different major hospitals. Nobody could figure out what was going on, and they were mostly looking at her blood tests and so forth. So I did the unusual thing. I actually talked to her. I'm a third-year medical student. What do I know? I talked to her, and it was clear to me that she was very depressed. I brought the psych consult in, and he validated it because the medical system, they weren't seeing that at all. And once we got the key thing, which it was her psychological state, then everything else opened up and her physiology came into normal and she became healed. So it's kind of works in different ways. And I've seen people just make some kind of physical healing thing and break through, and then everything else comes into order too. So that's how I look at it in terms of that.
What is the 7-fold piece that you talk about in your new book, Into the Nothing?
So as I began to kind of look at things, and this is like an Essene metaphor. The Essenes were the ancient prophetic mystics of the desert around the time of Jesus, really 300, 500 years BC, really. But the 7-fold piece is peace with the body, which we've been talking about, peace with the mind, and peace with the family. So it includes what I call sacred relationship. And I see relationship as a spiritual path. The interaction that people have with each other, and I don't want to just say male, female in today's world politically, but the feminine energy and the masculine energy, and that could be 2 men or 2 women, they interact in a way that can really elevate them to higher levels of spiritual awareness. So it's a spiritual path in that way. So relationship, marriage, however, is a spiritual path. Next is peace with the community. And as we see today, there's a lot of chaos out there. And to be able to find the right interface takes a lot of spiritual awareness. The next is what I call peace with all cultures. And from the Native American path, we call it Om Takiwasan, to all my relatives. Okay. What does it mean? It means peace with the living planet, the rock people, peace with the plant world, peace with the flying, swimming, walking ones, and peace with the humans, who have culture and memory in that way. So that's another level of the 7-fold piece. And then I call it sacred ecology. I don't see myself as an environmentalist. I mean, I've lived off the land for years and years and years. Here's the key. I am the living planet. I'm not one with the living planet. So it's an experience of the oneness. And of course, you take care of yourself, you take care of the planet. You take care of the planet, you're taking care of yourself. But it's a oneness experience with the living planet, not as you're acting on it. And then finally, peace with God.
Now, final
That's a
question.
short. Yeah, go ahead.
Final question for our audience who would like to meditate with you. How can people join your periodic worldwide meditations?
Okay, so there's 2 levels of things, and I'll explain. One level is once a month, because it's so important people reconnect to their soul at this point in history. I have a meditation retreat, which we're doing over the internet. All they have to do is do drcousens.com or go to treeoflife.mn.co, and they can sign up for that. Okay, that's key. And there are other workshops and so forth, but meditation is what we're talking about. Now, that reinforcement is really, really quite important. Now, we've been doing also worldwide peace meditation since 1985, since March 21st, 1985. What are we doing? Well, the research shows that when people get together, it really upgrades the global mind. Now, let me be specific. Literally, when 1% of a population is meditating in cities 25,000 or more, they studied 16 different cities, there's a 16% drop in crime rate. In Rhode Island, meditators came in for the summer and the crime rate dropped 43%. I mean, violent crime. And people said, that's a fluke. They came in next year, 49% drop. What we're saying, what I'm specifically saying is we are affecting the global mind and also the local mind. Now, even the solar system, Dr. Propane began monitoring what we were doing, and he showed that there was actually drop in sunspots when we were doing the meditation. So we're looking at the global meditation that we're doing on a regular basis, equinox and solstice, as well as the monthly meditation. So that they can, either way, treeoflife.m.co or drcousens.com.
Wonderful message. And again, everyone can find out more about Dr. Gabriel Cousens and his life-changing work at drcousens.com and treeoflife.nn.co. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, medical intuitive healer Catherine Carrigan, author of 10 books. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn how to heal yourself naturally. And remember, natural healing, according to Dr. Gabriel Cousens, is about learning to connect to your soul and loving yourself enough to get better. Thank you so much.
I just want to give a blessing here. I want to bless you, Catherine, for the great work you're doing. May it continue to expand. And I want to bless all your listeners that they take this message and expand their lives to more greater and greater spiritual joy and spiritual love.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.